Hello, it's Robert Whitaker with Journeys Through Time from HansfordHeritage.com. I remember opening my first bank account at the Gruver State Bank sometime in the late 80s when I was just a kid, starting to show pigs for 4-H, and I needed a bank account. And I went to Gruver State Bank, and today takes me back to those days a little bit. This is from 1996. This is Kenneth Irwin. Kenneth, at that time, was the president and CEO of the Gruver State Bank, and in 1996, it was their 50th anniversary. Gruver State Bank was chartered in 1946. The Irwin family, or at least the grandkids of the Irwin family, the Odoms, and also some of the Irwin grandkids are friends of mine, and they're fantastic folks, and I'm just thrilled to found this recording with Kenneth Irwin, talking about the early days of Gruver State Bank, also talking about the early days of banking and agriculture in Hansford County, and some of the tougher times that farmers and ranchers and bankers of Hansford County had to go through from the 1950s into the 70s and also into the 80s. I think those of us that were alive in the 1980s and had any kind of memory of it, it wasn't a great time financially. Banks were closing in a lot of places all over the U.S. Real estate prices and interest rates were crazy. Kenneth kind of goes through that, outlines that, but for the most part, this is a great recording because it really kind of showcases how the business of banking evolved in Gruver and in Hansford County, and then continues today with the same family. What we know today is Western Bank. So enjoy, and thank you so much for listening.
You're in tune with KRDF-FM, Spearman, Texas, serving all of Hansford County.
People on the Go, featuring special guests with informative things to talk about. Now here's today's People on the Go.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to People on the Go. I'm Carolyn Cummings, your hostess, and this is Thursday, September 5th, 1996. Our guest this morning is President and CEO of Gruver State Bank, Kenneth Irwin. Good morning.
Good morning, Carolyn.
Kenneth, you're going to be celebrating a special event this weekend. What is that event, and what is the celebration?
Carolyn, we are celebrating our 50th year of business in Gruver. The bank was chartered and opened for business on September the 7th, 1946, in the lobby of the old, what used to be the Gruver Hotel. Mr. A.R. Bort, who happens to be my uncle, was a prominent farmer and rancher in the area, and was the primary motivator in seeking the bank charter. He had previous banking experience, and for some that probably do not remember, there was a First State Bank of Gruver that was organized in about 1929 when the town site of Gruver was laid out. And he was, to quote him, just hired help for several years. And in the mid-30s, I can't remember what year it was, 36 or 37, the bank was liquidated and taken over what is now the First State Bank here in Spearman. So for a 10-year period there, Gruver was without a bank, and Mr. Bort has said many times he made a vow to himself that if he ever had any money and things improved, why, he would try to charter another bank in Gruver. And this is what happened on September the 7th, 1946. And the history from that time on is partly documented, or pretty well documented, in the history of the bank, which appears in their history of Hansford County. He became basically the managing officer of the bank for several years. the bank was capitalized at $75,000, which at that time was probably a lot of money. There were about 15 original shareholders, and if you divide that up, you will see that there was about a $5,000 investment on the part of each one of them, which at that time was probably quite a bit of money. One of the reasons for the chartering this bank at that time, for the old-timers around here, and of course I wasn't here at that time, they cut a very, very good wheat crop in 1944. So there was some money available for investment purposes, and these original stockholders felt that it was a time to try to get a financial institution in Gruver. And I joined this bank in 1950, which was just 4 years old. And either fortunately or unfortunately, I've been employed there ever since. 46 years of service is either, some of my peers say, well, you've been there too long or you haven't been there long enough. I'm not sure which is correct. But the manager of the bank at that time was Mr. Bort, and an old-time friend of his who had also had previous experience in the banking business, Mr. R.L. Tom. Basically, there were two managing officers up through the early 50s and into the 60s. Mr. Tom retired in 1966, and I became basically the chief executive officer, carried that title. So I've basically been running the bank, if you want to use this term, for almost 30 years. The decade of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, I've done a little reflection, and it's interesting. Each one of them had different characteristics, yet the history of this area and this Panhandle and High Plains still does not produce a whole lot of change when you take it over that many years in a time frame. But the decade of the 50s, if I may take a minute here, started off with conditions a little bit similar to what we're experiencing right now from the moisture standpoint. Then finally, as the saying goes, it quit raining and never did rain again. The 50s were a very, I would say, tough times in the county and also in the banking industry. There was a tremendous cattle break in 1952, which had some adverse effects on a lot of our farm customers, ranchers. And the drought conditions continued. They were prolonged through all the 50s. Very little wheat was raised in those years. The irrigation was minimal at that time. So these were kind of tough times. As I go back and look through some of the old records back there and look at some of the loans that we had, some that were charged off strictly because they simply couldn't make the payments, have long since recovered. A lot of those old customers, as I reflect back now, have excellent balances with them. And this gets back to the attitude that I think is prevalent in this society here that we have in this area, that sooner or later things are going to get better. Of course, from a banker standpoint, sometimes this is a little hard to loan money on this faith that things will get better. The 60s, the decade of the 60s, was not a whole lot of change except the advent of irrigation, which really began in earnest in the early 60s. Interest rates were reasonably low. They had a spurt, as I can well recall, in 1966, which in the industry we kind of call a credit crunch, which in looking back in retrospect, it was nothing compared to what we experienced in the years since then. Entered the 1970s with, I guess you'd say, an air of optimism. Things began to change with the advent of the cattle feeding industry in this area. And this was probably a prevalent industry that continued on, and this was an industry or an area that required a lot of capital. And the term we used basically in the 70s was we were in a capital deficit area. In other words, to seek financing for these type of enterprises, you basically had to go outside of this area to get the big amounts of capital that it took to handle these type of enterprises. Then, as we go through the 70s, we finally get into the 1980s, which were rather traumatic and of a lot of respects. To begin the 80s, things were, I guess we might term, in a boom area. Real estate values and prices rose in the early 80s. We experienced this up until about 1984 to 85, which a lot of people now will remember that what we refer to as real estate and oil and gas, if you want to use the term, went south. And this is the advent of a lot of bank failures, which we were fortunate, I think, in this area that we had no more than we did have. But in retrospect, I think our area here was faced with enough of them. And of course, this was again what was referred to as a farm crisis in the Midwest. And as severe as it may have seemed in that area, it certainly, of course, it had its effect in this area, but not to that extent. This area, as everyone knows, is highly agriculturally oriented. I think the thing that kept the economy as good as it was, the banks in the condition they were, that agriculture has the capacity to rebound from some serious problems, as well, I think, documented in what has happened here this summer. In other words, the severe drought we had, and up till 90 days ago, the complete turnaround. And I often quote that this country is noted for promising you less and producing more. And on the other side of the coin, it can promise more and produce less as well. But this is part of the heritage of this country, and I think all of us that have been here for a while will acknowledge this and learn to live with it. Then we approached the decade of the 90s, which started off very well. From the banking industry itself, we begin to see the advent of bank consolidation. Branch banking came in to being. We begin to see the bank mergers, acquisitions, and as time goes on, and even up to the present time, there's even more so. Where, we'll say the community bank, like the Gruver State Bank, the banks in our county here, where we'll be in 5 and 10 years from now, is a very good question. And all of us involved in the banking business think about this every day. And we are still small community banks. We would like to think that we can maybe carve a niche that serves our customer base. and still maintain that one-on-one relationship with their customers. How long this can be maintained with the advent of technology, I don't use the term home banking, which is a prevalent term anymore, that if you have a computer, you don't really need to ever go in to visit your banker. Everything can be done with a computer. I'm not so sure that this is what we're ready for in this area yet. I think most of our customers like the one-on-one with their personal loan officer, personal teller, whoever they might want to talk to. So we just have to basically pay it day by day, and from the technology standpoint, we don't want to be left behind, but we don't want to be too far out in front.
Okay, let's take a real quick break, and we'll come back, and we need to mention who the original board members were and who they are now, and specifically tell what you're going to do this weekend.
All right.
Okay, we'll be back after this message.
I catch murderers, rapists, and thieves. I do it by analyzing hair and fiber specimens. I guess you could say chemistry class led me to a life of crime. I'm Julie Willie, director of the Delaware State Police Crime Lab. I have this very cool job today because when I was in high school, I didn't think it was uncool to take chemistry. My parents and teachers always encouraged me to study math and science. My older brother was my role model. He majored in biology, and so did I. Nobody ever expected less from me because I was a girl. Do you have a daughter? Instead of a tea set, get her a chemistry set. Tell her a girl can be any kind of scientist, an astronaut, a marine biologist, or even a forensic microscopist like me. Expect the best from a girl. That's what you'll get.
Help turn your daughter onto math and science. Call 1-800-WCC-4GIRLS. This message brought to you by the Ad Council and the Women's College Coalition.
Welcome back to People on the Go. With us this morning is President and CEO of Gruver State Bank, Kenneth Irwin. And Kenneth, we need to mention who some of the original board members were and who they are now. And
All right, Carolyn, the original board opposed Mr. A.R. Bort, J.C. Harris, Lawrence Gruver, William F.D. Etling, Coy Holt, Gay Fletcher, and Mr. A.L. Forson. I might add that Mr. J.C. Harris and Mr. William F.D. Etling, Bill Etling as he's known, are still living. They no longer, of course, involved in the bank, but they were two of the original stockholders and directors.
Mr. Bort is still with us.
Mr. Bort is soon to be 99 years old and still maintains a small interest in the bank, the ownership-wise, and we still carry him as chairman emeritus and as a director emeritus, and we want to acknowledge his contribution to the bank over the years and still have him maintain the relationship that we have him with. Our present board members are myself, my wife, Janet Irwin, my son, John Irwin, and also another son, Mark Irwin, and another son, Dr. Clint Irwin. This, I guess, is what there's not many of them left, but I guess this is what you refer to as a family-owned bank. My family acquired total ownership of the bank in 1982, and nothing has basically changed since then as far as the ownership is concerned.
Where do you look for Gruver State Bank to be in the future? Everybody has dreams.
That is a good question. Of course, we are what we call a fiercely independent bank, and being fiercely independent can encompass a lot of things, but primarily it means very local ownership and no association with either a regional bank or a large multi-bank holding company. With the advent of the recent rash, if you want to use that term, of mergers and acquisitions, it's it poses the question of that you just asked: where are we going to be in 5 and 10 years from now? A lot of things determine this: management succession, the age, say, of management and ownership, are all factors that are to be considered. I'll only say this: there's no plans at this time, and I don't think in the future of any change in our setup, our management, and our board. And we want to continue to serve our area and our community as we have in the past, and still be an independent bank that can give that, hopefully, personal service that I think the customers in this area will demand.
Well, I know over the years you've had address changes, and the banking industry itself, you've mentioned the personal touch. You've changed to automation, as all banks have.
Right.
But you might hit on some of those changes, including the addresses, since we are doing this as a Hansford memory.
Well, of course, the automation, I guess, really came, as far as our bank is concerned, back in 1973, which I don't say it had a dramatic effect, but this was when we went to the personalized checks that had your account numbers electronically encoded. And I'm not saying this was a traumatic effect, but it took a lot of the customers a long time to get used to saying, well, I've got to use this check. I can't go in and use the old counter checks that have been out of the lobby and just simply sign my name. Now I've got to have a number. Of course, looking back and thinking how inconsequential that was at that particular time in view of what has happened in the years since. From an automation standpoint, we have just now begun to issue a ATM cards, automatic teller machines. We don't have the machine in at this point in time, but we do issue the cards, which the customer can use anywhere they want to use. Another a bit of additional service in this area is what we call our telebank, which is a recent innovation in the last few years. Most banks do have them. Again, I think our younger generation, the younger customers, have no problem with this. Some of our senior citizens, and I would be included in that, I guess, really don't use it that much because we like to have a live voice on the phone whenever we call it instead of a recorded message. Where are we going to be here on is a good question. I wish I could answer it. From a technology standpoint, we've just simply got to, assess what it takes to remain competitive. It's very difficult to figure out exactly where you need to be in this climate. So all we can do is just basically play it day by day.
Day by day. This Saturday, you're going to have a celebration because will be the 50th anniversary. Tell us what's going to be going on at Gruver State Bank.
Well, Carolyn, we're having an open house from 2 to 5 Saturday afternoon, and of course we extend an invitation to all our customers, friends, and everyone in our area here. It won't be anything just particularly outstanding, but it's just to celebrate the 50 years and acknowledge that we have been around for this length of time, and hopefully we will be. The bank has enjoyed a normal growth. It hasn't been what we would term outstanding. We've tried to maintain over the years a very sound and well-managed institution. I might add that our capital structure was $75,000 when the bank was chartered 50 years ago, and now our total capital is in excess of $4 million, which we are a strongly capitalized bank, and this what makes for safety and soundness to protect our, number one, is our depositors.
Kenneth, we're just about out of time. Is there anything else that you need to point out to our listeners?
Carolyn, not that I could think of, except we want to extend a very sincere invitation to, say, all our customers and friends to stop in with us Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I, for one, thank you for 26 years of those 50. That's when Wayne and I started. We appreciate all that you've done for us.
Well, thank you. We're very happy to have had you as a customer.
And that's it for for People on the Go. I almost went back to the old name. We've been visiting this morning with Kenneth Irwin, and we hope you've enjoyed it. And don't forget the open house this weekend, and you have a wonderful day.